All right, guys, just a quick video today just to wrap up the civil rights movement and talk about kind of the legacies of what we commonly refer to as the civil rights movement. I would say that the movement has never stopped. A lot of people view the assassination of King and the decline of uh, the short civil rights movement of the decline of nonviolence as kind of an end to the civil rights movement. But the struggles continued since that time. It's just taken a different form and been less public. So we're going to talk about the decline of the movement in the late 60s and early 70s, and talk about some of its legacies as a movement, how it's benefited American society. So we're going to talk about SCLC and what happens to it after King's assassination. We're talking about the Black Power movement and its decline, and basically how the 70s really changes civil rights, and talk about the results of those changes. So King realized that most of African Americans were prevented from achieving equality because they were poor. We don't hear about this King very often, but he became a proponent basically of saying that we have to reorganize American society, not just the political society, but also the economy of the United States. He came to believe that that poor people were robbed of opportunity. Poor people of all types were robbed of basic opportunities, and that America really needed to come up with a system that benefited more people with more equity. And we don't talk about that King a lot because he's kind of a little more revolutionary than maybe just pressing for we like to think that the King and the civil rights movement was trying to guarantee blacks' rights to sit at the same lunch counter as white people, or shop at the same store, or even vote. And all of those things are important reasons for the movement, but we ignore sometimes this push for a demand for equality, and equality goes beyond those things, and it goes beyond race as well. And King really, with the Poor People's Campaign, starts to push that issue, and it costs him quite a bit of support amongst white people that had traditionally been supportive of SCLC. But after King is assassinated, Ralph Abernathy takes over as new leader of SCLC. He had been a loyal King lieutenant for a long time, and he basically leads thousands of protesters on a march on the nation's capital to continue King's Poor People's Campaign. Unfortunately, the campaign turned out to be kind of a disaster. Bad weather really dwindled the numbers. Media relations weren't very good. Abernathy was not a natural leader on par with King either. So he didn't really, push, or he didn't really push people to excel the way King had. The campaign also clearly failed to clearly express what they wanted. What were they marching for? It's just kind of like the Occupy movement here recently in the United States. There wasn't really a clear set of demands. So that was part of the problem. Also, the reality is that the American people are, they're tired of the upheaval. It's basically becoming a drain on Americans, more or less. They start to lose focus. Plus, you have focus start to shift to Vietnam and the anti-war movement after 1968, which is going to kind of take focus and heat out of the civil rights movement. You also have the beginnings of the women's liberation movement as well. All right, so the Black Power movement starts to rise in '66, continues to gain momentum throughout the late '60s, but it's facing an uphill battle because as you know, the Cold War is going on during all of this. So all the civil rights stuff is going against the backdrop of the Cold War. And the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover specifically targeted Black Power organizations. He had always thought of the civil rights movement as a threat to American society, but the Black Power movement provides a more ready target for the FBI because white Americans are a lot less comfortable with the idea of Black Power than they were with the movement, the nonviolent movement. So the FBI basically makes it its mission to bring down civil rights groups, specifically those Black Power groups. The FBI sends people in to infiltrate the movement, and they start to spread false rumors that the Panthers intended to kill SNCC members, and they create a split between SNCC and the Black Panthers. They forged posters, leaflets, forged letters from different groups, and basically tear the movement down from inside. Here you have the two founders of the Black Panther Party, Huey Newton on your left and Bobby Seale, of course, on your right. Huey Newton posing in probably the most famous picture in the history of the Black Panthers. You can see the very Afrocentric idea, surrounded by the supposedly traditional shields and spears, African shields and spears, and also, representing the militant nature of the Black Panthers, the rifle in his right hand. But so, Hoover is very concerned about the Black Panther movement, and basically, he's spreading this misinformation. The Black Powers are the recipients of police raids in many Black Panther headquarters throughout the nation, and these raids resulted in armed conflicts. Even when Black Panther members didn't fight back, oftentimes there were armed conflicts. And by the early 70s, armed violence had led to the killing or arrest of many of the Black Panther members. SNCC, again, is one of these organizations that collapses with the help of the FBI. After Stokely Carmichael leaves, H. Rap Brown becomes the head of SNCC. And basically, FBI agents had infiltrated the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Commission and convinced Brown to take increasingly radical positions that further alienated him from other civil rights, or that further alienated SNCC from other civil rights movements and alienating them from former supporters. And basically, the membership begins to decline rapidly. Brown is eventually, and in fact, Brown is actually arrested in the early 70s for robbery and all sorts of other charges, and actually is in trouble with the law off and on for the rest of his life. He's actually currently serving a life sentence in federal prison for murdering a police officer. But anyway, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 banned discrimination in housing, and basically you have more African Americans moving into former white neighborhoods, and this causes what's known as white flight, and many white people living in formerly white neighborhoods will leave rather than live with Black neighbors. And as a result, in order to speed up integration of city schools, the courts order busing, that students be bused across town to different schools, so schools will be desegregated. And this meets fierce opposition in the North, specifically from in places like Boston, where you have white mothers that protest against busing, and it is a major cause of this white flight that we talked about, migration of whites from the cities to the suburbs. This development increase the political power of African Americans in the cities. So in a lot of ways, it's also responsible because there's less whites in the cities. There's more African Americans. They have more political power in those cities. It also is kind of responsible for taking some of the venom. Not venom is not the word I'm looking for, but taking some of the urgency out of the movement. Also, you have the development of affirmative action programs that give preference to minorities and women in hiring and admissions to make up for past discrimination. Basically, the idea is, if you have two equally qualified candidates, then you need to try to give a position or admit a student that's from an underrepresented group. So in the 70s, black power comes to mean something different. As African Americans become the majority in many counties in the South, you have more and more blacks being elected to public office. And many of the leaders of the movement actually go on to serve their nation in many other ways. Thurgood Marshall, who was the attorney for the NAACP that argued Brown versus Board of Education, goes on to become a Supreme Court justice, the first African-American Supreme Court justice in American history. John Lewis is a congressman from Alabama, and he is the guy on the video, basically the Selma video, right at the head. He's got the backpack on, and he's almost beaten to death in Selma, Alabama. Great hero of the Civil Rights Movement, and he is now a congressman for Alabama. Andrew Young, who was one of Dr. King's associates, becomes Georgia's first black congressman. And since Reconstruction, and since doing that, he's also served as U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia. Jesse Jackson, who some of you all have probably heard of, is a little more current figure, founded a civil rights organization called Operation Push. And he actually was a Democratic presidential candidate in the 1980s and actually did well enough to put some heat on other Democratic nominees. So you see that the movement splits, it starts to decline, but you're talking about major impacts that it has on American society. Not only in all of the laws that are passed and all of the new legislation that basically eradicates legal inequality, legal discrimination, but also because it changes the way blacks are viewed by many people, but also in a larger sense, it changes the way that blacks view themselves. So you have a sea change. I mean, when you look at how far we've come in just a relatively short time, it's pretty remarkable, even though obviously American society still has a long way to go. For instance, just last week, a African American was sworn in as was appointed as a senator for Massachusetts after John Kerry was made Secretary of State, and it marked the first time in American history that two blacks have been in the Senate at the same time. So I mean, yes, we've come a long way, but obviously still have a long way to go. So make sure that you're hitting up your unit objectives, you're getting ready for your exam or your summative assessment, and keep working hard, and we'll see you back for your next video installment. Bye, guys.